Claire Weston had lived in her small Vermont cabin for almost 3 years. And in all that time, the winters seemed to grow longer instead of shorter. Every season brought the same quiet days and heavy evenings, the same deep silence that stretched from room to room. She tried to fill her time with books, warm tea, and small tasks around the house. But the truth was simple. She was lonely. Not the kind of loneliness that came from being alone for a few hours, but the kind that settled into your bones when life stayed quiet for too long. The night the storm arrived, Claire lit her fireplace early. Strong winds rattled the windows, and snow began to drift so thickly she could barely see the road. She wrapped herself in a wool sweater and tried to read, but her mind kept drifting. Every page reminded her of how long it had been since she had heard another voice in her home. She didn't expect anything to interrupt her evening. That was why the sudden knock at her door made her freeze. She lifted her head, unsure if the sound was real or only in her imagination. Another knock came louder, this time followed by the faint crunch of boots in the snow. Claire's heart jumped. No one came to her house during storms. No one came most days at all. She set down her book and moved toward the door, every step slow and cautious. When she pulled it open, a rush of cold air swept in, along with two figures dusted in snow. Evan Carter stood on her porch, shivering slightly. He was tall, with dark curls that stuck to his forehead from the snow. Behind him stood his younger sister Lily, holding a small box of cookies pressed tightly against her coat. Both looked like they had walked through more snow than anyone should. "Hi," Evan said, his voice warm but strained from the cold. "I'm really sorry to bother you. Our power went out and the whole road looks dark except your place. We didn't know if it was just us." Claire blinked, surprised to see anyone, let alone her new neighbors. She had only seen Evan twice from a distance, once unloading boxes, once jogging past her mailbox. She didn't know him, but something about his face, tired yet kind, made her let her guard down. "You both must be freezing," Claire said, stepping back. "Please come inside." Lily's cheeks were red from the wind, and she looked up nervously, like she wasn't sure if they were causing too much trouble. Claire gave her a gentle nod, and that was enough. Lily stepped in first, followed by her brother. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around them the moment the door closed. Snowflakes fell from their jackets and melted into small puddles on the wooden floor. Lily placed the cookie box on the table, her voice soft as she spoke. "These were supposed to be a welcome to the neighborhood gift," she said. "We didn't know when to bring them over." Claire smiled, a little surprised by the simple kindness. "Thank you. That's very thoughtful." Evan glanced around the cabin's soft light. Fireplace crackling, books lined neatly on shelves. It was warm in a way that didn't come from the fire alone. "Your place feels peaceful," he said. Claire wasn't used to compliments, not ones directed at her home, her effort, her world. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She only nodded and offered them towels to dry off. Lily took a seat near the fire, clearly relieved to feel real warmth again. Evan hovered awkwardly, as if he didn't want to intrude more than necessary. Claire motioned toward the kitchen. "I can make hot cocoa," she said. "Or a tea, if you prefer." "Cocoa sounds great," Lily answered immediately, her eyes brightening. Evan nodded. "If it's not too much trouble, it's no trouble at all," Claire said. "I'm glad you're here." Those words surprised her. She hadn't planned to say them, but the moment they left her lips, she knew they were true. She had been alone for too long. The presence of other people, real conversation. Real warmth felt like someone opening a door in a room she had kept closed for years. While she prepared cocoa, Evan joined her in the kitchen, wiping snow from his sleeves. He looked around again, taking in the sense of calm that lived in her home. "Storm came in fast," he said. "I was checking the generator when everything went out. Lily got scared, so I figured I should check on the neighbors." Claire nodded as she stirred the cocoa. "You're a good brother." He gave a small smile, the kind that held a little pride and a little exhaustion. "She's been through a lot. We both have, I guess." Claire didn't press him for details. She understood how heavy stories could be. Still, something about the way he spoke stirred a small ache in her chest, like she recognized a quiet sadness in someone else. That matched her own. Outside, the wind howled and snow slammed against the windows. Inside, the three of them created a small island of warmth and comfort. Lily sipped her cocoa with both hands wrapped around the mug, her eyes fixed on the flames in the fireplace. "This is the coziest place I've ever been in," she said with a dreamy sigh. Claire laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard come from her own mouth in a long time. Evan glanced toward her, his expression warming at the sound. It was as if he hadn't expected her quiet voice to hold such a gentle laugh. Claire noticed his reaction and felt a small flutter in her chest. It wasn't attraction in a bold way. It was something softer, something that came from being seen. "Even for a brief moment. You two can stay until the storm calms down," Claire said. "It's dangerous out there." Lily nodded quickly, and Evan gave a grateful smile. "Thank you. I didn't want her out in this any longer than necessary." "Neither should you," Claire replied. "You look frozen." He laughed a little, running a hand through his damp hair. "I probably am." Their conversation moved easily after that. Claire was surprised by how natural it felt. She hadn't spoken this much in months, yet the words came without effort. She learned they had moved from New York a few weeks earlier, looking for a quieter life. Lily had struggled with city noise. Evan wanted a fresh start. Claire understood both feelings well. The storm grew louder. The wind howled with the force of something ancient, something determined. Lily curled up on the rug, slowly relaxing under the warmth. Claire noticed how the girl's face softened. Losing the tension she carried when she first arrived, Evan took a seat nearby, but kept glancing toward his sister with protective eyes. The gentle care he showed her made Claire's heart warm. It wasn't the dramatic affection of a movie, but the kind of everyday love that mattered far more as they talked. Claire realized how much she had missed simple, normal human connection, the warmth of someone listening, the comfort of someone understanding that hours passed quickly. The three of them shared stories, small jokes, and pieces of their lives that felt safe to offer. Claire found herself laughing again, and each time she did, Evan looked at her like he was surprised she had ever been lonely at all. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin, everything felt calmer, softer. Each minute felt like a small step toward something Claire had not expected that evening. Hope. At one point, the fire flickered and Claire added another log. Evan stood beside her, watching the sparks rise. "You didn't have to take us in," he said quietly. Claire shook her head. "Maybe I needed this more than you think." Evan's expression softened. "I get that." For a moment their eyes met, and the room felt warmer than before. Not romantic in an overwhelming way, not something intense or inappropriate, something gentle, something human. To lonely people realizing they didn't have to stay lonely forever. Lily yawned loudly and lay back on the rug. Claire laughed. "She's exhausted," she said. Evan nodded. "She'll fall asleep anywhere if she feels safe." Claire felt a small tug in her chest. "I'm glad she feels safe here." Evan gave her a look, soft, sincere. "I think we both do." The wind continued to batter the house, but Claire barely noticed any more. She sat near the fire, resting her hands around her mug as her heart slowly opened in a way it hadn't in years. The night stretched on like a story she didn't want to end. Not because she had fallen in love, not because anything dramatic happened, but because the emptiness inside her finally had company. The knocking on her door had changed everything. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing clearly. She wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time in a long time, that felt enough. The storm had finally slowed to a gentle fall of snow, quiet and soft, brushing the outside world in white. Inside the cabin, warmth lingered from the fireplace, though the heat seemed almost symbolic, warming, more than just the room. Claire Weston poured herself a cup of cocoa, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, and glanced at Evan, who was watching her silently. His dark eyes, tired yet tender, made her heart skip in a way she hadn't felt in years. "You really didn't have to let us stay," Evan said softly, breaking the silence. Claire smiled faintly, stirring her mug absent-mindedly. Maybe I wanted the company more than I realized, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers traced the edge of the mug, warming her hands. Though it was more the words themselves that made her feel a little braver. Lily, now wrapped in one of Claire's blankets, had drifted off to sleep on the rug near the fire. Her chest rose and fell gently, the innocence of her rest adding a layer of calm to the room. Watching her, Claire felt a small protective warmth toward the girl. Somehow this quiet domestic seen the storm outside. The crackling fire, the soft breath of a sleeping child made her heart feel alive in a way it hadn't in years. Evan glanced at his sister, then back at Claire, and the room felt suspended in a delicate balance. There was comfort, yes, but also a hint of something more. A connection that was quiet, yet undeniable. It wasn't romantic in a forceful way, but it was this subtle pull of familiarity, understanding, and shared solitude. I know it's sudden, Claire continued, but you're welcome to stay as long as you need. The storm might last a while. He nodded, a small, genuine smile tugging at his lips. I think we both needed this more than we thought. Claire felt warmth rise in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was from the fire, the cocoa, or the simple truth in his words. Perhaps all three. They spoke for hours, slowly uncovering pieces of their lives. He told her about moving from New York for a quieter life, seeking peace after years of city chaos. She listened, silently recognizing the longing in his words, a longing she knew intimately. Claire shared her own story in fragments, careful yet honest. The loss of close friends over time, the heavy emptiness of days spent alone, the struggle of holding on to hope while living quietly in the mountains. Evan listened not just with his ears, but with a kind of attention that made her feel seen. His presence was calm, unobtrusive, yet full of empathy. The storm outside faded into a gentle whisper, and the firelight cast flickering shadows across the walls. The soft light seemed to soften everything else to the tension, the loneliness, the ache Claire had carried for so long. For the first time in years, she felt something fragile, yet profoundly comforting. Connection. Evan shifted slightly closer, careful not to intrude, but close enough that their shoulders brushed occasionally. Each accidental touch sent a quiet flutter through Claire's chest. She didn't overthink it. She simply allowed herself to feel it, to acknowledge that there was life beyond the walls she had built around her heart. I can't remember the last time I felt this. Relaxed, she admitted, her voice catching a little. Me neither, Evan said softly, his eyes meeting hers. The gaze was gentle, curious, patient, not demanding, not urgent, just present. Time passed without urgency. Words came and went like soft waves, sometimes light and teasing, sometimes quiet and introspective. They didn't rush the conversation, but each sentence carried weight, each pause filled with meaning. Claire realized how much she had missed this kind of connection, the human kind that doesn't require pretense, the kind that heals quietly through understanding. Lily stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly, and Claire smiled. She's comfortable, she said quietly. Evan nodded. That's good. It's nice to see her at ease. Claire felt her chest tighten in a familiar, subtle way, the way it did when someone cared enough to notice. Evan wasn't just a visitor in her home. He was a presence that filled the empty spaces she had long ignored. The conversation shifted to simpler things books. Local spots, small favorite memories of the city they had left behind. Each story, each laugh, drew them closer in subtle ways. Not physically, but emotionally. A trust was forming quietly, gently. The kind that begins without declaration or fanfare. You're strong, Claire, Evan said after a pause. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. But you don't have to carry everything alone. Claire's eyes softened. The words struck a chord. She had spent so long carrying her loneliness like a shield, keeping herself distant from the possibility of friendship or intimacy. And yet, here was someone gently acknowledging her strength while offering a safe space to let it down. I'm realizing that, she admitted, her voice steady but quiet. Maybe I've been trying to be too strong for too long." The fire crackled, echoing in the quiet room, a comforting, rhythmic sound. Outside, the storm had become a whisper, snow falling lightly against the windows. Inside, the warmth between them felt tangible. Not physical closeness, not romantic in a bold sense, but a mutual recognition that something new was beginning to take root, a spark of hope. The start of emotional intimacy. They sat in silence for a moment, simply observing one another, absorbing the quiet companionship. Claire realized that she didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations to feel alive again. This soft, genuine connection was enough. It was more than enough. Evan looked toward the window, then back at her, his voice low and gentle. "If you ever need someone, don't wait for a storm to bring them here." Claire felt a small smile tug at her lips. "I think I might not," she said softly, feeling a thrill she hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't infatuation, not yet. It was the quiet thrill of letting someone into her life, into her world, without fear or hesitation. Hours passed. The fire burned low, and the room was filled with a soft, comfortable darkness, only illuminated by flickers of the last embers. Lily slept peacefully, and the cabin was wrapped in an atmosphere of calm intimacy, one that healed rather than excited, comforted rather than overwhelmed. The night ended not with dramatic declarations, but with small, meaningful moments. Evan helped Lily settle more comfortably, pulling the blanket higher around her small form. Claire watched, feeling a strange, soothing sense of belonging. She wasn't alone anymore. She had shared her home, her warmth, and in return had received something she had almost forgotten: the feeling of being understood. As dawn approached, the storm completely vanished. Snow coated the ground in quiet beauty. Evan and Lily prepared to leave, the morning light spilling through the windows. Claire walked them to the door, feeling a small pang of longing she hadn't expected. "Thank you, Claire," Evan said softly, his dark eyes holding hers. "For letting us in. For everything." Claire smiled, a true, unguarded smile. "I think I needed to let someone in, too." They stepped out into the crisp morning, their footprints marking the snow. Lily held her brother's hand tightly, smiling up at him. But Evan's eyes lingered on Claire for a moment longer than necessary. It was quiet, simple, meaningful. A promise, perhaps, that this connection was only beginning. As she watched them walk up the snowy path, Claire felt a warmth deep in her chest. Not the fire's warmth, not the cocoa's warmth, but something more profound. The warmth of human connection, of trust, of hope slowly returning. She realized she had been lonely for too long, but now she was ready to welcome life and perhaps love in its gentle, patient form. The cabin, once filled with silence, now hummed with the memory of shared laughter and quiet conversation. Claire sat back by the fire, letting the calm of the morning wash over her. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if Evan or Lily would return soon. She didn't know if a deeper relationship would grow. What she did know, with clear certainty, was this: she had opened her door, and in doing so, she had opened her heart. And sometimes that small act, letting someone in, was the start of something beautiful, quiet, and life-changing. For the first time in years, Claire felt ready. Ready to trust again. Ready to let warmth in. Ready to experience the gentle, healing power of human connection. The snow glistened outside her window as morning light filled the cabin, signaling a new beginning. And in that glow, Claire Weston felt alive, hopeful, and surprisingly at peace.